Alright, so before this video starts, I just want to talk about what this is all about, what this video series is about, and what is an XBOX Steambox. Well, an XBOX Steambox is this thing right here. It's basically a gaming PC, fully fledged with a power supply, CPU, motherboard, and a dedicated graphics card, all built into an Xbox original case. And basically, I built one already, and I'm going to be showing you in just a bit on what's inside and how I built it. And before the next build starts, I'm going to show you guys what the exact parts I'm going to be using and what case I'm going to be using for the next build. Basically, it's all going to be inside this Xbox right here. It's a limited edition, Crystal Edition Xbox. And that is what the Xbox Steambox series is going to be all about. It's a gaming PC inside an Xbox original. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Alright, so I think it's been like 2 years since I've been telling people I'm going to be making a video about the Xbox Steambox machine that I built here. So right now it's January 2018, and I'm going to finally be making this video and kicking off the Total Kommando channel with the Xbox Steambox project. Now, other people have done projects like these before, but this one is a bit unique. It's got a built-in dedicated power supply, a dedicated GPU, and the goal here is, of course, as usual, to make it look as original as possible. In this video, I'm just going to be talking about and show you guys inside on how I built the original Xbox Steambox that I built for myself about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm also going to be building another one with much improved specs with some really nice hardware. So first of all, this is an Xbox original, of course, and the specs are as follows. We've got a Core 2 Duo, 2GB of DDR2 RAM. I know it's pretty low, but I'll talk about that in just a bit. A 750GB 2.5-inch Western Digital Blue drive, an AMD Radeon 7450, if I remember correctly, a 100-watt power supply, and I think that's it. And the motherboard here is a bit interesting. It's one of its kind. It pretty much sits somewhere in the middle between MATX and MITX, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the front I/O. So on the front right here, of course, we got two USB 2.0s. We got an eSATA and the headphone and headset jacks. This is the reset button, and this is the power button that I changed into a blue color, which as we're going to be powering this thing on and take a look at it. And on the top here, if I remember correctly, we got an 80mm fan, as well as a golden power supply shroud. And finally, taking on the back here, we got the mangled mess it is right now. Over the years, I've been kicking it around, moving it around, never really used it because it's pretty slow, and it definitely needs an upgrade. So over here, of course, we got a power supply, and it's using a standard PC plug. So we have a power supply, and that's the fan. I should have made that bigger. Again, we might modify this later in the future. We'll try to upgrade it. This is the I/O, 4 USB ports, and a VGA, and pretty much we're not using any of this other stuff. No Wi-Fi yet. Originally, we were using a USB stick. Finally, we have the 7450. Again, I'm not sure what it was, but it had 1GB of VRAM. It was an okay card, just enough to play emulators and run Windows and play a couple games here and there on low settings. It has a DVI-D as well as a DisplayPort. No HDMI. I had to use an adapter, and that's why this thing is that big, because of course it doesn't fit. Actually, let's go ahead and take it apart and power it at the same time. Let's go. Alright, so the Xbox usually has 6 screws, 1 in each corner, and then 2 in the center right over here. And these are of course not being used because the motherboard is right under there. So let's go ahead and take these covers apart and get into this Xbox. So this uses a T20 Torx screw, and pretty much all the screws here are the same length. And if you constantly open this Xbox and close it, the screw holes will eventually require even more tightening, and you'll pretty much ruin the plastic to the point where you cannot screw it anymore. But usually it happens because of the power supply. It is touching the top of the cover just a tiny bit, so I have to use extra force in one of the corners. And once you have the 4 screws off, the cover just pops off like so, and reveals the inside mess that it is right now. Basically, nothing here was planned, nothing here was engineered. Pretty much everything happened as I went. So this is what it looks like. We got the power supply, the 100-watt power supply. It's from a shuttle PC, and I really like it because it's small, it's compact, and I can fit it inside an Xbox like this and not have to use one of those janky Pico power supplies with an external power adapter. They're good, but I just don't want to use the power adapter externally. I want everything to be contained inside the machine itself. The power supply here is mounted using hot glue under it, so it is not going anywhere. And then the hard drive is Velcro to the side of it. We might be using it in the other build later on, or we might just keep it here. And of course, regular SATA cables, everything is just standard. Here is the graphics card mounted vertically, not horizontally, and with no riser card, so that's that. That is the mighty Core 2 Duo with its single RAM slot, which is the biggest unfortunate piece of this motherboard. It has a single RAM slot, and of course, as you guys know, DDR2, it rarely has a 1x4 gig stick. AMD motherboards can support 4 gig DDR2, and the RAM sticks for that are pretty damn cheap. I bought them before and I installed them to another PC because it didn't work on this one, of course. But if you want to buy a 4 gig DDR2 RAM, which this motherboard does support on the website, and it's kind of stupid, it costs $100. At least that was about 4 years ago. And if you try to buy one now, it's still pretty expensive. It's 4 gigabytes of DDR2, 800 megahertz, some off Chinese brand for 52 Canadian dollars, I believe. Still pretty expensive for what it is. I really don't want to have a kind of a non-working machine or a machine that's just going to sit there and do nothing. But at the same time, I might just skip on this one because the power supply here is kind of giving up. And I do want to upgrade this with a Core 2 quad, which I do have, and probably a better graphics card, which I also do have. But we'll find out later in the future once we get the other build done, and then we can get back to this build and then figure out what we can do and improve it. Yeah, here's the power supply. Here's a close-up of the cables. All the cables are spliced because the power supply cables originally were not long enough, so I took an old power supply that was broken and I just pretty much hot wired everything and got the extra connector that I needed for this guy right here. And here's what I'm talking about by this being a hybrid or somewhere in the middle between an ITX and an ATX. It has an extra PCIe mini slot. So that is what makes it so weird, because no other motherboard that I've seen yet has that exact same layout, which is pretty interesting. I'd rather have another RAM slot than a single PCIe mini port. That said, I was actually planning to install either a Wi-Fi card or a USB 3.0 card and improve this thing, but that never happened, of course. So yeah, that's actually pretty much it on the inside. It's just a bunch of cables. I could take apart the whole thing and show you guys, but I don't think there would be any benefit in that. Let's just go ahead and power it up and see what it looks like on the inside, what it sounds like. And one more thing, I actually had an extra USB header installed inside of this thing, and that's where I had the Xbox 360 adapter, wireless adapter for the 360 controllers, as well as a Wi-Fi card. But of course, those both were interfering with each other, along with the metal that is inside. So the signal was pretty bad inside this thing when you had the USB Wi-Fi adapter as well as the Xbox 360 adapter. But yeah, that's actually pretty much it on the inside. A couple more things. The motherboard here is actually not mounted at all. I can just take apart this motherboard. That's why I was flopping around. It was more secure before. This fan was pressing on the motherboard, and of course the motherboard was pressing on a mouse pad that I installed under this thing, so it doesn't short itself out. At the same time, it does give it some grip and stop it from moving. So the fan here was also mangled and installed jankily, but yeah, I used hot glue and I just glued it on there. And it took a while to get the right configuration because the fan blades were actually touching the top of this thing. But that's actually pretty much it for the inside. There's nothing much going on. It's just a bunch of wires, just a whole lot of mess. And one more thing, in the original build, I actually had a USB header installed here, and I had two USB ports installed inside, which one of them was a Wi-Fi adapter and the other one was an Xbox 360 wireless adapter. And of course, that didn't end well because these were both interfering with each other since they were both using 2.4 GHz network, as well as the shield right here. This all interferes with the connection. So it wasn't the best build. It was pretty messy, but that said, let's go ahead, power it up, and see if this thing still runs and how slow it is. And yeah.